Where are the mass protests by the woke, liberal, feminists, those who are equality warriors, the Me Too movement? Where are the mass demonstrations by the Me Too movement against the Taliban? And in fact, we could actually say that the political wing of the wokerati have had a huge part to play in allowing the Taliban to take over Afghanistan. And of course, in the past few weeks, there's been a lot of navel gazing, a lot of people looking round and looking who they can blame for the series and catalogue of mistakes that have been made since 9/11. But they ignore one thing, that 9/11 did not come about because of poverty. 9/11 did not come about because of oppression. 9/11 did not come about because America is building an empire. No, 9/11 came about because of religious ideology, because of fanatical religious ideology, because Osama bin Laden and his friends in Al-Qaeda decided to actually act on what they believed Muhammad was telling them to do and Allah was telling them to do through the Quran, the Hadith, and the traditions of Islam. And many people say that their interpretation is a very traditional and very conservative interpretation of Islam, and is not, as we're often told, a perversion of the religion, but is in fact the true understanding of the religion. Now, I'm not an Islamic scholar, and I'm not a Muslim, but from what I've seen and from what I've read and from people I've spoken to who are Muslims, who are Islamic scholars of varying degrees, that the interpretation of Islam that the jihadists believe in is perfectly matched by the history, traditions and texts of Islam. And of course, that's been ignored for the past 20 years. Yesterday, I almost found myself agreeing with Tony Blair, which is frightening. That's how bad things have got. And what I do agree with Blair and what were called the neocons is that the reality is you must use force against jihadists. Now, I'm not talking about private individuals. I'm talking about the nation state. I'm talking about the British military, the American military. When there is an Islamic insurgency, an Islamist insurgency, a radical Muslim insurgency, whatever you want to call it, a jihadist insurgency, when that happens, it must be met with force. And the only military might on the planet that is capable of launching attacks against jihadists wherever they pop their heads up is the United States of America. And the fact that Biden has said these endless wars are over and has left the field is extremely worrying. And why is it worrying? Well, there's several things have happened as a result of Biden's hasty withdrawal from Afghanistan. First of all, I don't believe there should have been a withdrawal from Afghanistan. I think Trump was wrong, and I think Biden was wrong. I think the British, American, NATO and Western forces should have stayed there, should have kept working in a low-key way using special forces, intelligence, and the superior technology and air power that they have, and obviously the Afghans themselves as foot soldiers to protect their own country. We should have stayed there and in a long war of attrition ground down the Taliban until they realised that they could not win. And that could have been done. It would have been costly. It would have been costly in treasure and costly in lives. But some wars are worth fighting no matter how long they take to win. The Cold War never became a hot war, but many people died in proxy wars around the globe in the battle against communism. And the irony is obviously that we defeated communism to then fall prey to the socialists from the universities and the academy who have brainwashed a generation of politicians and establishment figures who pop up everywhere, from the military to the police to parliament to the civil service. But I'm digressing there. But the reality is that the communist ideology was defeated by a superior ideology, which was based on Judeo-Christian principles, based on the thoughts of the Enlightenment, and also based on free market capitalism. And all of those things, when working together, are what make up Western civilization. And what Biden has done in Afghanistan, in his surrender to the Taliban, and that's what he's done, he's surrendered to the Taliban. He's handed a country over that would never have been perfectly stable, but could have made progress. And yes, there was horrendous insecurity. But given the right time and governance, there could have been success in Afghanistan. And now that's all been completely squandered. And one of the most heartbreaking things I think I've seen are the women, the young women of Afghanistan, who were probably born after the invasion. The whole population of Afghanistan is very, very young population. And these young women are demanding their rights. And they're going on camera and they're saying, we're not scared of dying, we're not scared of the Taliban. The sad thing is many of those women, I believe, will be murdered. I mean, people watch this this feminist drama series called The Hand Maids. I didn't watch it, but I've an idea what it was about. And it was really, I think, about the male patriarchy and how women deal with that. Well, here's the real Handmaid's Tale. It's Afghanistan. And where are the feminists? Where's the woke establishment? Where's the Me Too movement shouting for those women in Afghanistan who are going to be brutalized? They're going to be raped. We've already heard of a pregnant female police officer being murdered. We've heard of a woman being murdered and set on fire for not cooking food that the Taliban liked. And you may say, well, atrocities happen in all wars. Well, yes, atrocities do happen in all wars, and they're sick and they need to be condemned. But at the very time that the US and the UK government and even the leader of the UK military, the coward-in-chief of the UK military, was saying that we should recognise and engage with the Taliban, at the very time that Boris Johnson and Biden and all these other weak, limp-wristed, wet-lettuce politicians were saying that we should engage with the Taliban are brutalising, raping and murdering women and young girls, taking 12-year-old young girls as sex slaves. Where have we heard about that before? Oh yes, the grooming scandal that's still going on in the UK and nobody's talking about because nobody can be bothered to talk about it. So why does this matter to us? Why does the Afghan situation matter to us? Well, several reasons. First of all, the religious ideology behind the Taliban comes from the Deobandi movement. The Deobandi, if you like, is like a denomination that you would have in Christianity. It's a fundamentalist Islamic denomination. And the Deobandi madrasas in Pakistan were providing the cannon fodder for the war in Afghanistan. They were radicalizing young children, young people who went across the border and paid with their lives for listening to the false and crazed ideology of the Deobandi madrasas and the Deobandi imams who were radicalizing young men by the thousands and sending them to their deaths in Afghanistan. Why does that matter? Over 40% of the mosques in the United Kingdom are Deobandi mosques. So that makes it very, very important. So that's the first thing. The ideologues behind the Taliban have a massive presence in the United Kingdom. There's also, I think, 8% of the mosques are Salafi mosques. Bin Laden, I believe, was Salafi. Al-Qaeda, I believe, was Salafi. ISIS, I believe, was Salafi. The Taliban itself, we've just heard that the new interior ministry, or the new Interior Minister, in other words, the equivalent of the Home Secretary, is a man called Haqqani, one of the leaders of the Haqqani network. And the Haqqani network were mentors of Osama bin Laden. They provide military muscle and material support to Al-Qaeda, protected Al-Qaeda, fought alongside Al-Qaeda. They launched their own terrorist attacks in Afghanistan, in Kabul. They attacked the Intercontinental Hotel in Kabul. They attacked the Indian Embassy in Kabul. They are an Islamist organization. And they are the muscle, if you like, now behind the Taliban. They are the security forces. And those poor women that are on the TV that every right-thinking person should salute and say, that's the sort of Muslims that we want to see. Those young women. I don't know whether they're Muslims or not. And you see, the reality is the secret weapon that the West has never employed against radical jihadists and radical Islam, or conservative Islam, or whatever you want to call it. The secret weapon that the West has never activated is the women of Islam, female Muslims, who are the victims, the biggest victims of the Taliban by far. I remember in 2000, I think it was, watching a documentary about the Taliban and watching them shoot women in the back of the head in the middle of the football pitch in Kabul. And I remember just being filled with rage. And I remember I've said this before, in the 1980s, when the Mujahideen were fighting against the Russians. Now, in our naivety, we didn't understand Islam then. In our naivety, we were cheering them on. And my Pakistani friends in school were telling me, oh, my Uncle Abdul, he's fighting, he's gone across from Pakistan, he's fighting the Russians, he's a great hero, he's a great warrior. Because obviously all their families were in those areas, those border areas of Pakistan. So we are in real danger, not just because of the Dear Bandi, not just because there are a lot of people in this country with connections, with family connections, with blood connections, blood ties to Afghanistan and Pakistan already. But we're in very real danger. Now, NATO, the security services of America, of Britain, are all sounding the alarm bells about this mass exodus of people from Afghanistan coming to the West. Now, I've said on record, I believe that the translators that can be vouched for and that can be properly vetted could be a very great asset to the United Kingdom and to the United Kingdom's battle against terrorism, because they could be used as surveillance operatives to watch what's happening in radical jihadist communities up and down the country and also abroad. However, this idea of tens of thousands of Afghans coming to the United Kingdom because Boris is on a guilt trip, because he completely messed up the withdrawal from Afghanistan, completely messed up the operation, totally took his eye off the ball. Okay, had a lot on with Brexit and COVID, but he's made some horrendous clangers. The protocol in Northern Ireland being another one, but we're not going to talk about that tonight. But just because Boris is on a guilt trip, and the media and the left and the liberals are putting him on a guilt trip about abandoning the people of Afghanistan, does not mean that you allow half of Afghanistan to come and settle in Bradford and Middlesbrough and Belfast and anywhere else that the government chooses and sees fit to put them. It doesn't mean that you allow tens of thousands of people to illegally enter this country. There's only so much our country can take in terms of staying cohesive, in terms of healthcare. We've just all been told that we're going to have massive tax rises. I wonder how many of the refugees are going to pay for the tax rises. I wonder how many of the illegal immigrants are going to pay anything towards the tax rises for the healthcare that they will benefit from and for the safety and security that they will benefit from. And of course, then there's the other idea of the insider. Remember the insider attacks in Afghanistan where soldiers were killed by their Afghan colleagues who were nothing of the sort. They were terrorists who'd put on a military uniform and then attacked the people that were training them how to fight. And think about this, we've trained these people to quite a good level. And if they are insiders, you've got a ready-made army that you're going to import to the country. And like I say, if you can vet people and you can vouch for them and they're going to be 100% patriotic, I have no problem with good quality military men and interpreters coming to the UK and joining the effort to fight against the Taliban and fight against ISIS and fight against the Islamist insurgency, the global Islamist insurgency that Tony Blair was talking about yesterday. I don't have a problem with that, but what I do have a problem with is, and this is what will happen, because this is what always happens, is the net being far loosely cast, and we're going to be pulling out some good fish and we're going to be pulling out some bad fish, and that's what worries me. We cannot just allow masses of potential terrorists to come into our country. And I believe that that's what this government is going to do. And I believe we'll pay a heavy price for it. So yes, let the people in who can help this country in the fight against terrorism, but the ones that may well be involved in terrorism and may well be radicals, we must have the ability to throw them out of the country and even send them back to Afghanistan. Because if they are genuine radicals, nothing bad's going to happen to them when they go back anyway, apart from the fact that they've failed their missions. So Afghanistan is a complete mess. I believe that we should have stayed there. I believe that if the need arises, that British soldiers, British airmen, British sailors, British Marines and British paras and special forces should go back in there, and if there's a ISIS, Al-Qaeda or any militant cell that seems to be plotting serious attacks against the West, they should be clobbered. But the biggest problem that we've got, that we already have, you know, the gates have already, if you close the gates now, the enemy is already within the camp. There's 42,000 jihadists. That's according to the government. There could be a couple of 100,000 supporters, minimum, in the UK. And if we look at the stats from the polling, they stopped doing these polls, you know. I mean, they used to do these polls on a regular basis, asking people in the Muslim community what they thought about suicide bombing, what they thought about Sharia law, what they thought about women's rights, and so on and so on and so forth, what they thought about people who were apostates, what they thought about people who insulted Muhammad. They stopped doing those polls because the results were so frightening for the government and frightening for the population. I think the last one I saw was 2017, and it didn't make happy reading. So that there is already a mass of jihad supporting fanatics in our country that are not being dealt with and are not being looked at by the state. Well, they are being looked at by the state, but the state doesn't have the resources to look at them long enough. So what do we do? How do we solve this problem where we have people within our country that genuinely believe in the caliphate? They believe that there should be a global Islamic government. That's what they believe. And there's a lot of people believe that. How do we deal with that when there's a lot of those people in the country already? What do we do? Well, I don't have the answer to that. But I think I was talking earlier in an earlier video about building a social media platform where we can talk about these things openly. Again, without going down the road of crazy talk and xenophobia. But these are conversations that need to be had by the broad population. It's all right having them in the ivory towers of government and the ivory towers of think tanks. But what I want to do with my network is have common sense, real people being able to discuss these things and be able to try and find a way through the absolute catastrophic mess that we are facing. And it's about finding people of goodwill in all communities, and it's about finding people that will come round and rally around the flag and support the United Kingdom. Well, there's just a few thoughts on Afghanistan. I've done one other video on another channel. This is the only video I've done on this channel about Afghanistan, and my goodness knows what the Stasi at YouTube and Facebook are going to do next. I think we're going to come to a situation. Sorry about that. We're going to come to a situation where we can't talk about anything. And so, like I say, I'm building a new platform. Thanks for watching the videos. Like and subscribe to this channel while you can. And once the platform is in a position where I'm happy with it, I will open it up. And obviously, I'm going to have to be extremely careful in what we can say because of the new legislation that the government is passing. But it is going to be a platform where people can express opinions that are not mainstream, as long as they do it without incitement and without breaking any UK laws, because obviously the platform owners are liable to £1 million fines if you do that. So keep an eye out for that. That's going to happen very soon. The platform's already built. I'm testing it at the minute, and once I launch it, I'll let everybody know, and we'll have a little launch and get people involved. But we need to talk about these things, and we need to work out how we solve these very real problems that our nation is facing. So I'll see you all so soon, and thank you for watching.